Hi, I'm Dana, and today I wanted to talk about being autistic and being bullied, because it seems like something that all of us have been through at some point or another, whether it was as children or in workplaces. It just seems like the common autistic and really neurodivergent experience is being picked on by our peers. I do also have people outside my house because they're working on someone else's house and they're soaring and doing stuff that they need to do, and I'm sorry. I know I could wait for a different time, but I sort of film videos as the feeling for it comes. So we're doing it now, and I'm sorry about any noise. So one of the big things for me when I was first diagnosed, and what I said to my partner at the time, was that I felt like it explained why I'd been bullied so much. Because, especially as like a very young child, I didn't feel like I was different to other people. I felt like I was just myself and everything was good, as a very young kid. And yeah, I got bullied from near enough the second I entered school. I moved schools multiple times because of bullying. And I always felt like other kids could just pick up that there was something different about me, like before I even picked up that there was something different about me. And it put them off. They didn't like it. They didn't like me. And I'd spent over a decade at that point trying to figure out what this thing was. Was it the way I did my hair? Was it my face? Was it the way I spoke? Was it the phrases I used? I changed so many things about myself to figure out if that would be the thing that made them suddenly stop bullying me and stop being mean to me. And it never ever worked. It always just carried on. So it felt for me like being told I was autistic was the answer. It was being told, like, this is why people bully you. It's because you're autistic. It's because you don't necessarily react in the way they expect. And and there's even talk about how, like, for a lot of neurotypicals, people who are neurodivergent and especially autistic can come across as kind of uncanny valley, because, like, we're clearly a person, but we're not reacting in the way you expect us to. We don't have the body language of what you expect a person to have, and so on and so forth. And I definitely think it was largely that. Like, it's very, very easy to pick up on something being different about someone, and kids love to be nasty about that thing. And I still don't really get why bullying happens in the way that it does, because I just can't imagine ever being as mean to someone as some people were to me. So that's not what we're getting into. It's the autistic experience of being bullied. So for me, like I say, it started as soon as I entered school. And the big one for me as a kid, like in primary school, prior to the age of 11, for like you non-UK viewers, before the age of 11, I was constantly accused of being the bully. And it made me so frustrated. It made me so anxious to go to school. It made me so anxious to tell teachers when I was being bullied. Like, I very, very, very rarely went to teachers in high school, even when, like, horrible things were happening to me, because I was so, I suppose, really traumatised from the reactions I'd gotten from teachers in primary school. There was one boy in specific that I remember called Jack, and he just hated me. He was in the year below me, and just from the moment he saw me, he wanted to poke fun at me and be mean to me, and he'd call me every name a child fucking knows. And what he found really entertaining and funny and amusing was jumping on my back, because I was a big kid. I was taller than everyone, I was overweight, and he was a year younger than me and a generally small kid, so he could very easily just leap onto my back, and it didn't really, to the teachers they were like, but you can handle that, it doesn't affect you that much. But I've got someone jumping onto my back. And for a while, I'd just sort of like shake it off and try and get on with my day. And then it got to a point where he was just doing it so often that I just fucking lost it. And I just rammed my back with him on it into a wall. And he got quite hurt because he was then between my solid body and a solid brick wall. And I got in lots and lots of trouble for it. I got in so much trouble for it. I remember being pulled out of class and he was in like the fucking nurse's office crying his eyes out with his mum, while his mum was going on about how she's so much bigger than him. How could you let this happen in your school? And my parents finally arrived, and it was my dad that was the person to be like, well, why was he on her back? Are they friends? Does she even know him? Like, why was he there? And that was when I finally got the chance to speak up and be like, he's been doing this to me for months. This happens to me almost every day. It hurts me, it hurts my feelings, it hurts me physically, and he does it all the time. And they didn't give a fuck, they didn't care. All that they cared about was that I'd physically hurt him, and that meant that I must be bullying him. And he mostly left me alone after that, because guess what? If you really, really hurt a bully, they tend to leave you alone. but other people took his place. I pretty much always, throughout my like school career, had at least one person that just took it on them to be horrible to me. So he just got replaced. And at this point, even though I'd had that experience, I still kind of believed that teachers were good people that wanted to help me. And obviously lots of teachers are amazing, but a lot of the teachers that I had, especially in primary school, just did not care at all. They didn't listen, they didn't empathise, they didn't give a shit. They didn't look for any sort of nuance to any situation. What they so often saw was just Dana has hurt a student. And it, you know, it was true. I never denied it. I never said, no, I didn't do that. I was always like, yeah, I did that. And I very rarely got to explain why I'd done it for a start. And even if I did explain why I'd done it, I was so constantly told, oh, but that's not the way you deal with that. You should have told a teacher, shouldn't you? And it's like, but I've told a teacher every other time and look at that, it just keeps happening. Nothing's been done. Oh, you told them off. They don't care. You know, they don't care. It doesn't make any difference. Like, the two other big things that stand out to me about primary school was there was this one girl, Chloe, and I don't remember the names of like the majority of people I went to school with. So these people like really stand out to me, considering this was like, oh my God, I'm old. That would have been like 15 years ago now, like primary school times. But this girl, Chloe, constantly talked shit about my mum. My mum was a dinner lady in the school, and she also did like the toast run when we got toast at break times. And this girl was just constantly shitting on my mother, being really rude, being really horrible, being classist, you know, just generally being an absolute bitch. Which, like, she couldn't have been older than like 8 or 9 when this was going down, so it's insane that her parents had already thought of that. But, you know, I didn't have that sort of complex thinking as a kid to be like, oh, it's really sad your parents are so horrible. I just heard what she was saying. And after many months of this, she had come up to me to start saying it to me in the playground, and her friends had like surrounded us a little bit. And I don't actually, like, even at the time, I remember telling my parents, like, I don't remember slapping her. I know that I did, but I, like, it wasn't even a blackout. Like, I saw red, and then my hand went up and it absolutely whacked her across the face. I've never slapped anyone like that before or since. It was like a TV movie slap across the face, big pink handprint across her face. Off she runs crying to her teacher. My parents get called in. Again, my dad was like, okay, but what was she doing? And I explained she's been verbally harassing me for months and months and months. But that doesn't give you the right to hit someone, Dana. You can't do that. You should have told a teacher. And there were multiple times that teachers that were in the meeting would be like, oh, well, she actually has told me about this in the past. But I didn't realise I didn't realise it had escalated. I didn't realise it. It's like, yes, you fucking did. You just didn't care. And the other time, I don't remember her name, but there were these two girls that were sisters that my mum quite often, like, I think their mum was maybe a childminder. I don't know. I ended up spending a lot of time around these girls that I didn't like and they didn't like me. And we went to different schools, but there was this one time that I think my school might have had a gas leak. Something had happened, and I lived in a small village growing up. So their school had to come to our school, so they were with us at the break time. And they were always like a little bit, they clearly didn't like me basically, so that we weren't friends or anything. And they sort of felt like they'd just been like shoved in with me. And they obviously got the vibe from other people in the school that I wasn't a well-liked kid. And one of them came up to me and just, again, started talking shit, being really horrible, being really rude. And I'd already had a bad day. And I didn't need this shit from someone that didn't even go to my school and also got to do this to me outside of school anyway. Like, you're already doing it to me after school. You're not doing it to me in school as well. And, like, I'd said something back about her mum because I did not like their family. So I'd said something about her mum and then she came back with something. It became like an arguing match where people were like, oh, wow. You know, it became like a big thing. And then she hit me. And this girl was significantly smaller than me in every way possible, and it didn't hurt in the slightest. I really didn't care that she had hit me, to be honest. Like, it didn't physically hurt, but it pissed me off. It made me really angry. I don't like it when people suddenly like upgrade an argument. I was fine just arguing with you. You didn't need to hit me. And again, it was like I almost saw red. I remember doing it, but I don't remember, like, normally when I do something, it's a very thought out action, you know, I'm thinking about how I'm doing it and what I'm going to do it to, like, I think about things, basically. I didn't think about this, I just grabbed her by the fucking hair and tore her to the ground, and, she obviously wasn't expecting it, and it was with a lot of force, and I don't remember what happened, for a minute after that, because there were people around us. I'm guessing everyone must have done something. But I just remember walking away from everyone and then looking down and having like a fistful of her hair. Like, she must have had a bald spot from that. And bear in mind, I was under the age of 11. Like, these are kid tats, you know. I didn't like fucking beat anyone up, and I highly doubt I could now. But, you know, I really fought back for myself and stood up for myself in primary school. And then I did my first 2 years of high school in Denmark, which is a very different experience. And it was a very different type of bullying, because it was very driven with the idea of like, you should go back to where you came from, you shouldn't speak your own language here, you should speak Danish, you're not one of us. And it's one of those things where I've brought it up to quite a few different people, it's come up in conversation, and people have been like, well, that's racism. And I'm like, I don't feel like I get to pull like a racist card as a white person, you know? I don't, like, it's the same things that they would say to be racist to someone else that is brown or black. But I feel like saying it to me, it's bullying, it's shitty, it's nasty, it's kind of harassment. I don't feel like it was racist or like racially charged, you know? I'm no expert in race topics, but I just don't feel like people can be racist towards me. You know, it wasn't about my race, it was about where I originated from. And I know that that's like a whole thing as well. But I just think it was bullying that had the same use of phrases that racists have, essentially. And it was very weird, and it's made me very, very but it was really weird, and it's made me very, very empathetic to people that have moved here. And I think it's the main reason that I'm very like anti-racist, educate yourself, immigrants and refugees are all okay, like don't be a dick. So I had that for a while, but it sort of just rolled off me. I didn't really care about that because it wasn't really about me, you know? It wasn't that they didn't like me, it wasn't that I was fat or ugly or stupid or whatever else people had told me. It was just that there was a lot of messaging on the news of go back to your own country, and these kids were spouting what their parents said because they didn't like me. But then I moved back to the UK and went to like a high school where I felt like I sort of more so understood like the culture and what was going on, because I didn't have a clue what was happening in Denmark. Like, throw in being undiagnosed autistic along with not knowing the language or the culture or what's happening. Like, I was just very confused all of the time in Denmark. And I was slightly less confused when we came back to the UK, but not for very fucking long. I've told this story in videos before, I'm sure, but my first day of high school in the UK, it'd gone fine. I'd been ditched by the girls who went to show me around, and it was all very stressful, but it was fine. And I'd gone out for a walk that night and gone to a little park down on the beach to have a nice little time, and got chatting to some lads there, and they were like, do you know Sophie? And I was like, I don't really know anyone yet, to be honest. And they're like, no, you go to this school, so you'll know Sophie. And I was like, I'm not sure that I do know Sophie. And they were like describing different like things about her, and I was like, oh wait, is she like kind of fat? And I didn't think it was rude because I was also fat at the time, so I sort of saw it as like, you can't be like bullying someone for being fat if you're also fat. I was like, I can just say that. And they were like, oh yeah, kind of, a little bit actually. And I was like, oh, I think I might have her in my science class, I'm not sure, don't really know Sophie. Didn't think much of it, went home, whatever. Next day at school, immediately confronted, why did you call Sophie fucking fat? Who do you think you are? You're fat too, why are you going around calling people fat? And I was like, because I'm also fat. I didn't think it was a bad thing to say. But I got absolutely fucking harassed for that. That was still brought up to me when I left that school, like 3 years later. I've never understood that one. I don't think I'm ever going to. But from there on, it gave people free rein to be like, you've been a bitch from the first day you came to the school, so everyone here can say whatever they want to you. And it's just us doing a good course, really, because you're the bitch. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? So I just had a lot of crap from people. And at this point, I knew that telling teachers didn't help. I knew that I couldn't fight them, quite frankly. I wouldn't have won, and that wouldn't have then helped, you know? So I just ignored them. That was the advice that was given. That's the advice that's always given. I just ignored them. I didn't respond. I didn't reply. The only times they got any sort of like rise or response out of me was one time when I'd gotten a new bag. It was like a satchel style bag, and it was bright pink, and I thought I was the hot shit. And a lad at lunch had like grabbed it and immediately broke the handle, and it sent me into a meltdown. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, like, but the second it happened, I started crying. The tears just came. I went bright red. Everyone started laughing. The lad was like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Why are you like crying? What the fuck? And I ran off into the bathroom of the school and had a massive meltdown, complete with stims. And I thought I was just upset. The other time was a girl called Taryn. Fucking hated her. And she hated me as well, so like whatever. But we were reading in an English class, and I loved my English teacher, he was fab. But we were reading and she kept telling me, you're going too fast. And I was like, no, you're reading too slowly. We were in little groups and we all had to like read the passage kind of thing. And it didn't matter how slow I went. Like I was going intentionally like ridiculously slowly to the point that other members of the group were sniggering. Like it was funny how slow it was. And to be a cunt, essentially, she went, no, it's still too fast. I can't understand what you're saying. And I was like, I've had enough. So I just started reading the passage as quickly as I possibly could. And then, I was so close to being done with the bit I had to read. And she was like, no, you're going to have to start again. I definitely can't understand you now. Why are you being like that? And again, I don't remember, like, having the thought of reacting or the idea of how I was going to react, which is incredibly, incredibly rare for me. I just fucking threw the book and it was like, read it your fucking self then, Taryn. Go on. And the English, like my teacher had to send me out obviously because I just screamed at another student and sworn in his class. But I do really think that most other people would have been sent to their head teacher for that, and he just sent me out of class for like 10 minutes to calm down. Like he definitely knew what was going on. And it's another one where again, I'm like, he was a great teacher. I really enjoyed having him as a teacher. We had little like after class chats about like what I was reading and what I was writing and what I was enjoying. And even then when he was seeing someone be like that with me, he didn't actively do anything to stop her. You know, like realistically, she should have been the one that was sent out. She was the one that was disrupting the class. She was disrupting me from reading it to the rest of the people in our group. But I was the one that got sent out because nothing was done until it got to a point where I had to react. And she was my main bully for the end of high school. And there was one moment with her that's still fucking hilarious to me because, again, I've been ignoring her. That was what my dad told me to do. It was what teachers told me to do. Everyone told me just ignore them. So I'd just completely blank her. She'd say whatever, do whatever, and I completely ignored her as though she wasn't even there. And she was sat behind me in one of the classes with one of her friends, and she was just going off about the things that she hated about me. I was so ugly. My hair looked so stupid, you know, just horrible, horrible things about me. And then the last one that she started going off about was, and she just sits there and fucking ignores me. Like, she can hear me, can't she? Dana, you can hear me, like, shouting at me from directly behind me, kind of thing. One desk, little desk between us. And I didn't even flinch. I just did not respond. And she spent a solid 15 minutes going absolutely, like, spitting feathers kind of thing about how much it frustrated her and pissed her off that I didn't respond and didn't reply and didn't answer. Until her friend was like, don't you think maybe that's why she's doing it though? Because you've been explaining this to me for a while and you've been getting madder and madder. And it made me like smile even at the time because I was like, God, even her friend gets it and she's just so dumb. But it didn't stop her. Like she stopped there in that class and was like, yeah, that's a good point. But it didn't stop her. Nothing stopped any of them, honestly. Like, bullying is one of those things where ignoring them doesn't work. And if you can't fight them, if you can't beat them up, nothing else is going to stop them. I'm sorry, I know it's terrible advice. I know everyone wants like eye for an eye and, you know, like you'll just make everyone go blind. You've got to be nice to people. You've got to take the high ground. It doesn't fucking work in my experience. The only time that I've managed to make someone actively stop bullying me is to hurt them really badly. Like, not like hospitalisation, like in a child really badly sense, you know, like no lifelong injuries. He was fine a day later, but that's the only way I've experienced making it stop. You know, like even in high school, it's difficult with girls especially because like there was one girl and we'd have periods where we'd walk home with each other because we walked the same way home and we'd have lovely little chats, we'd have a good time, and that would go on for a few weeks and then she'd stop walking home with me and she'd be a complete bitch to me in school and be really rude and mean, and that'd go on for a few weeks, a few months, and then it'd switch back, and we did that for years, and I still don't understand that. I still don't know how that worked or why she was like that or what the fuck was going on. It's really weird. You know, and that's not to say that there weren't times that I was shitty to people. There definitely were times that I was shitty to people. There were most definitely times that I tried to reflect negative attention from myself by putting it onto other people and being like, hey, it's weird, hey, if you've seen her teeth or whatever, you know, like, I was definitely not like the perfect victim that never did anything. I was quite often bitchy and rude and mean and whatever else in high school. That's kind of how teenagers are, for the most part. And it's very much one of the things that I've realised over the years is that I will always remember the people that bullied me. I will always remember the things that they did to me. Like the time that a girl spat in my hair or the time that someone slammed a locker on my head. You know, they're things that I will always remember. I will always remember the shitty little comments that they made that well and truly wormed their way into like my psyche to really damage my self-esteem and my self-worth. They're things that I'll always remember. But to the bullies, that was just another Thursday. That was just another comment that they made. They don't remember that stuff. And you've got to just move on with it, and it's fucking hard, you know. And I was so often told that stuff ends with school, like you won't get bullied once you're out of school, and I was so looking forward to the day that I was out of school for that to happen. And admittedly, the little bit of college that I did before I dropped out, I wouldn't have said I got bullied. There was the odd comment that perhaps wasn't the kindest, but, you know, it was the odd comment from different people each time. None of it was, like, harassing. None of it was consistent. It was all stuff that I felt like I could deal with and get on with. You know, it wasn't always nice, but a lot of it was banter, to be fair. And, you know, there was nothing I could complain about, to be honest. It wasn't perfect, but it was fine. However, at 16, I was with a guy that was quite a bit older than me, so I'd started going out to, like, a really cool bar. I thought it was a really cool bar. It definitely wasn't. I wouldn't go to it now if it was still about. It was kind of just gross. But 16-year-old me was like, oh my god, it's like this like grotty, horrible little dive bar. This is so cool. So I'd go with him and we'd get drinks and it was whatever. And I, like, bear in mind, this is maybe 4 or 5 months out of high school. So I'm still 16. I'm still like basically a baby. And a couple that went to the same bar that were friends with my partner at the time started to just sort of pick on me a little bit. It'd just be the odd little thing, like I'd go outside for a smoke and the guy'd be like, do you even listen to the band that's on your t-shirt? Name 5 songs, come on, name 5 songs. And I always could because I wear t-shirts of bands that I liked. And I think, if anything, I made him dislike me more because I like proved him wrong in front of his friends. And the female that was in this little couple would consistently just kind of put me down a little bit. You know, it was things like, oh, I like that skirt. It doesn't really go with that top, but it's a nice skirt. Or, oh, that's a nice top. I don't know if I'd wear it if I were you, but it's a nice top. Things like that. Like, what I was wearing was nice. It just didn't look good on me. Or, like, the way I'd done my hair was nice. It was just like, my hair's not good. You know, it was always things like that. And any time I opened my mouth with anything, she'd one-up me. She'd always done something better. She'd always had something more traumatising happen to her. And she also did and said a lot of things that I won't go into that were extremely triggering for my mental health and around those areas. And it was just schoolyard bullying in a fucking bar towards a 16-year-old from 2 people that were in their mid-20s. And honestly, like, that damaged me. Like, having that be my first experience of, like, adult friendships and being in an adult space, that fucked me up. That was not what I needed fresh out of high school at all. Also didn't need to be going with a guy that was a full adult, but, you know, shit happens. But, like, oh boy, did that mess me up for my adulthood. And it's something that I bring up because the woman that was in this couple apologised to me a few years back. She took, like, I was at a different bar and she happened to be there and she took me outside and it was a whole thing where she said, I'm really sorry for anything that might have happened. I don't remember being like that, but if I was, I'm really sorry. And it both made me realise that they really don't fucking remember it. You know, the people that bully you, really, it is just another fucking Tuesday or Thursday or whatever else to them. They won't remember it. It's disgusting. They will tear someone down in a heartbeat and not even fucking remember it a few years later. And secondly, people will just apologise for anything to clear the air. They don't need to be fucking sorry because you cannot be sorry for something you don't really remember. Like, you cannot honestly tell me that you feel bad about it when you're also telling me you honestly don't remember it. Like, I'd much rather they just tell me, I don't remember that, but if it happened, that sucks. Rather than make it into an apology for something they don't remember happening. You know, I really didn't like that. Because that wasn't an apology for me. You know, she had heard that she'd done shitty things that she didn't remember. And apologising to me cleared her conscience. It didn't do anything for me. And really quickly, before I wrap this video up, I then had friendships in my early 20s that also descended into like essentially in-group bullying, and I was like ostracised from the group for being too close to one of them when someone else wanted to be her best friend. And it was the most pathetic little squabble ever, essentially. And again, a few years later, one of the people that were in that friendship group messaged me to apologise. The difference being, they remembered what had happened. They told me what they were sorry for. And I went, my dude, you weren't even actually involved in all of that. You were just in the group chat where they were doing it and didn't say anything. Sure, that means that you were a part of it because you could have said something. But if I was in that situation, I wouldn't have said shit all either, because you would have been the next one thrown out. Like, I get it. I didn't feel like they had a single thing to apologise to me for. You know, it was nice to hear from them again. I'd love to meet up and catch a coffee or whatever. But I didn't feel like I needed any sort of apology from them. I didn't feel like I deserved one. I didn't feel like they owed one. And if someone who was directly involved in that situation apologised to me, I'd probably tell them where they could fucking stick it. Like, it just really breaks my heart, honestly. Like, I know normally I'm talking about how angry things make me and how much they frustrate me, but it just makes me really fucking sad that so many autistic people grew up being bullied and continue to be bullied into adult life in various ways. You know, workplace bullying goes on all the time. And, you know, I've just had so many autistic friends that are being bullied and have been bullied, and they don't get why. And all too often, I do feel like it's literally just, they don't like you. They don't have a reason to not like you. They just don't. And, you know, you can go into like the in-depth and be like, is it because it's uncanny valley because we don't react how they want to? Is it because of this, and is it because of that? And is it because we don't have the right body language or the right social cues or the right facial expressions? But at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter, because you shouldn't be acting like that towards anyone. You know, and I can't say that I never have, but I can say that in my life now and going forward, I actively try to only react in kind ways to people. If I think of something horrible to say, if there's something about them that I don't like, I ignore it, I separate myself from them, I leave them alone. There is no need to be horrible to people. I'm going to end it on that note. I'd love to hear comments on this. I'd love any comments about why you think autistic people are bullied more. I'd love to hear about your experiences if you wanted to share any. I'd especially love to hear about any of you that actually managed to get one up on a bully. I'd love to read some of those stories. But for now, I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna do a really long outro. So whoever you are and wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I'll see you again in a couple of days.